The 2014 F1 season is remembered by many things: the exit of Cosworth, the change in power unit regulations, the beginning of the Mercedes era, the return of Kimi to Ferrari, the retirement of Mark Webber, the promotion of Daniel Ricciardo, and the return of the newly renamed Red Bull Ring and Hockenheim Ring to the calendar. Oh, and also there was this big aerodynamic shakeup that tried to get rid of high noses and led to the most phallic grid we'd had in F1 history. There have been widely regarded ugly cars all across F1 history, with X-wings, weird boxy shapes, front-mounted radiators way after they were proven inefficient, and sloped noses, which I actually like a lot, but there's a widespread hate, so I'll include them here. But none of those trends was as ugly and widespread as the 2014 beast that upon rear-ending each other might file a sexual assault report to the FIA with good reason. From the late 90s, high noses were developed to improve aerodynamic performance on the underbody of the car as demonstrated originally by Benetton, but due to the driver endangerment when impacting on a T-bone fashion led to the development of higher headrests, where ever since, the FIA worked on lowering the noses as far as they could. In the early 2000s, they implemented a maximum front wing height, and from 2007 on, flexi wings were banned. For the 2009 aerodynamic overhaul, all side wings were banned, and that's where we first started seeing really raised noses from some teams. The concepts then evolved into the 2010 generation, where we saw every team drop the sloped nose design, and a few like Force India even started using pointier wings, and for 2011 that design was unanimous. 2012 saw a change in regulation that mandated the front portion of the car to be no more than 55 cm high, but the section of the nose immediately behind it could be up to 62.5 cm high. Therefore, with designers continuing to prefer the aerodynamic gains offered by high noses, we got the stepped nose cars, whereas the intended idea was a more sloped design like that of McLaren, the only car to follow the route the FIA envisioned. Seeing as the teams were not going to gradually change out of the high nose design, the FIA allowed for a modesty play to bridge the gap between the tip of the nose and the highest part of the step for 2013. Therefore, every car resembled the 2012 McLaren, but that wasn't enough when it came to safety concerns, because most nose tips now went for longer than in every previous year. In what was the biggest change in regulations in F1 history at the time, we saw a new power unit introduced, and among other changes, a maximum height for the tip of the nose was added, and a minimum weight they would have to bear to pass the FIA crash test. Many teams stuck with the high nose mentality and tried applying it to the 2014 cars, while Mercedes and Ferrari went a different direction altogether. When the Caterham was unveiled, everyone's jaws dropped, but not in a good way. The last car by the once Malaysian, now English team was unveiled to the most drastic design on the grid, trying to keep the high nose at all costs, but with the dipstick. Using too much of the under part of the nose, it ended up negating the high nose effect. They would convert to a more conventional chopper later that season. Marussia went for a more concealed approach to their nose, building a not very radical design, more so a homologation of the previous year's car. The front end wasn't really pronounced. Williams and Sauber had also more conventional approaches to the design, concealing the nose pretty well into the rest of the structure, while Force India, Toro Rosso and McLaren were just taking the piss, literally, with their design, maximizing underbody airflow but fully exposing their manhood while doing so. Hell, the Force India even pennied their Peter Black. Won't somebody please think of the children? Lotus on the other hand went the opposite direction, making way for the twin tusk design. The rules mandating a single nose tip to be mounted far lower than previously and with a minimum cross-section made it tricky for the E22 to be homologated and pass the crash test, but with its uneven tusks it eventually managed to do so in time for the first race in Australia. It was envisioned to be a way to free the airflow on the underbody, but ended up compromising the whole package and didn't deliver the expected results. The Red Bull RB10 was the most pleasant and family-friendly of the 2014 cars with their nose-shaped nose, but due to Mercedes' surge in pace, the four-time champions only won 3 races that year, all in the hands of the newly promoted Ricciardo. Ferrari and Mercedes are the only teams left, and their wings were radically different to all the other ones, but for very different reasons. Let's start with Mercedes. The world champions started the glider era philosophy of low rake and nice flow around the car for 2014, and with the best engine on the grid, they managed to triumph with that package. While Mercedes were out in front doing their own thing, Ferrari were struggling hard, the hardest they would struggle up until the 2020 season, due to their power unit being low on power and much heavier than the competitors. Their front wing design meant the air was forced through the letterbox nose at high speed and then expanded into the area behind it. It was similar to how a diffuser or a ground effect car works. The Ferrari F14T probably created more downforce with its radical design than the W05, but it was just no match for Mercedes' overall package and extremely advanced power unit. So to close up, I thought I'd surveyed a lot of you to see what were your thoughts on the 2014 cars and how many of you were actually watching at the time. From the 72% that saw the cars live on track, 80% of you thought they were the nastiest cars ever, while the same ratio applies to those of you who weren't watching F1 at the time. Only 17% of you had a change in heart, while the other 83% still stuck to their guns to this very day. But overall, almost 75% of you think the 2014 cars are the ugliest in F1 history. Here were some of your first impressions of the cars. The casual guy said, "Those front noses on some of the cars look absolutely phallic." Alex Talks Racing said, "Probably the ugliest noses I've ever seen." TSY F1 had some words of his own with "They so ugly Lemao." "What the flying f*** is that?" were FP1's first thoughts, while Barun Sambi uttered "ugh." Hamza Shah was cursed when they said, "I didn't watch F1 then, but they look horrendous now that I searched them up." Slaughter Carey got her Bible and uttered "Jesus Christ," while RETH Feeder said what we were all thinking with Dildo Racing. A few more dildo ones. A guy just put vomits, but yeah, overall we were all pretty much in consensus that they were absolutely disgusting. So, now you know what actually led to the 2014 noses, and I hope you spread your knowledge around. As always, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you'd like more lighthearted content like this. Here are 2 videos you should absolutely watch, and I will see you all in the next one.